There is the inquiry on live animal transport, and we're trying to collect some signatures. We need 188 signatures, and I can tell you that in a very short time, we have now got more than 100 signatures. I think we've got 101. Oh, a few more, 106, and we're getting a few more now. So things are looking very good there, and I can only stress how important this is, because this will be something very, very important. We have never had an inquiry for an animal welfare issue here in Parliament before, so that's why it's very important for us to get these 188 signatures. Let's move on to animal experimentation. I mean, it really is a scandal that we still have to discuss animal experimentation here in this Parliament. It really does belong to the past, because we have enough alternative test methods now. And so I'd like to start by giving the floor to the first speaker. You have the floor, madam.
Thank you, Chair. And on behalf of my organisation, Cruelty Free International, thank you very much to the Intergroup for inviting us to come along to speak today. I agree with the Chair that we should have consigned the discussion about animal testing to the dustbin of history some time ago, and particularly cosmetics animal testing. We did this in Europe, of course, and we have a full testing and marketing ban in place since 2013. Unfortunately, that's not yet the case in much of the rest of the world. So just very quickly, for those of you who haven't come across Cruelty Free International before, we were previously the British Union for the Abolition of Vivisection, which is what we were called when we worked some years ago on the European Union cosmetics ban. We are the leading organisation that is dedicated solely to the question of animal testing. So we don't work on any other animal welfare issues. Just on laboratory animals and animals in scientific experiments. And as it says, we worked a lot on the European ban. And we work primarily with governments and regulators and with private sector companies and partner organisations across the world. We have advised a number of different governments on bans based largely on the European Union legislation. And we work with regulators through the ICCR, the International Cooperation, where we'll be speaking in July. And we run the Leaping Bunny scheme. So for those of you who've seen the little bunny with the stars on the back of some of your cosmetics products, household products, we work with the private sector to ensure cruelty-free products. So just a quick run through for those of you who aren't familiar with the roadmap to the European Union ban on cosmetics animal testing. It's 2004 when we first had the complete ban on finished cosmetics products. So that's already quite some time ago. And we do know that throughout most of the world now, finished cosmetic product testing is no longer an issue. So most countries around the world haven't, but could theoretically declare a ban, an end to finished cosmetic product testing. Between 2004 and 2009, we had the rolling ban on the testing of cosmetics ingredients on animals, and the legislation said that tests would be replaced as soon as alternatives had been validated. We think that was a very important part of the EU ban, because you can ban testing within your own territory, but to then import products tested elsewhere could be construed as being double standard, and also doesn't give the consumer the assurance that what they're buying within Europe hasn't been tested on animals. And we believe a similar roadmap could apply to countries that haven't yet legislated a testing ban. Now, the problem with doing maps of progress around the world is that things change very quickly. So my lovely pink map is already a little bit out of date, fortunately. We've had a ban, or a partial ban, in Turkey, and most recently in Guatemala. So the first nationwide cosmetics animal testing ban in the world in Latin and South America, in Guatemala. A couple of city-states in Brazil have bans. We're in the situation at the moment where Canada has a cosmetics testing bill in its Senate. Brazil has a cosmetics testing ban proposal currently in committee in its Senate. And in the United States, some members on both sides of the House are trying to reintroduce the Humane Cosmetics Act. It has bipartisan support, but it's still awaiting enough signatures to actually be put forward in front of the House. And Australia, far. 80% of the world, if you do the calculations based on the bans that are in place, would still allow cosmetics animal testing even today. It may not happen there, but one of the issues with globalization, of course, and when more and more markets cut down testing, is that testing could move. And the other reason, I think, for asking for a global ban on, or a global end, ban is a difficult word in some parts of the world, a global end to cosmetics animal testing, is one harmonized set of regulations. Yes, in the interests of animals, but also in the interests of trade and in the interests of industry. If you have to do something different for every market that you enter, then that's expensive, that's costly, and it's not great for consumers. Much easier if consumers know there is one set of anti-animal testing rules for cosmetics across the globe, and wherever you are, you can buy a product that you know after a certain cut-off date, because yes, historically most ingredients have been tested on animals, but after a certain cut-off date is cruelty-free. Innovation. One of the issues that came up when we worked on the European Union ban back in the day was, well, how can we continue to innovate if we can no longer test on animals? But actually, and I think François would probably confirm this, I think innovation has increased since that ban because industry has invested in alternative technology, in humane alternative testing. The third issue, and in some ways the elephant in the room, and quite a difficult one to deal with when you're asking for a global harmonized ban, is the question of China. China remains now the only market that mandatorily requires animal testing on cosmetics through its Food and Drug Authority. China has moved, and it is moving. It has moved to the extent that if you produce cosmetics within China, you can get away with not animal testing, and you could describe your products as cruelty-free. If you're importing into China, you may still be subject to mandatory cosmetic testing. Some of you may have seen in the past week, it's actually been quite big news. The beauty company NARS, which previously had called itself cruelty-free, decided that to enter the Chinese market, it would once again submit its ingredients to animal testing. And there has been a huge public outcry throughout the media, and a lot of NARS customers saying that they are now no longer going to buy NARS products. So again, in the interest of industry to move away from animal testing. We've been working a lot with the Chinese regulators and with Chinese scientists to try to introduce them to new alternative tests, to get them to accept new alternative tests, to accept that human safety does not require animal testing, and in fact animal testing is less predictive of human safety than the alternative tests. But if we do decide we're going to go for a global ban, it may actually be easier to persuade China to move if the rest of the world is moving around it. So yeah, the REACH legislation, ingredients can't be used for cosmetics purposes, that's what cruelty-free would argue. So only 3 to 5% of new cosmetics actually have new ingredients. That seems like a very low number, but if you take the OECD figures on how many animals could be used in a test on a cosmetic ingredient, between 1,200 and 1,400 animals at a time, you could extrapolate that to a situation where some 500,000 animals are still used annually in testing for cosmetics purposes. And certainly a lot of the NGOs working in this field believe that it is between 250 and 500,000 animals still used for cosmetics testing, which we believe is 500,000 too many in 2017. And consumer demand for innovation must be balanced by consumer demand for a cruelty-free industry. And polling all over the world, irrespective of where it's done, shows that consumers want cruelty-free cosmetics. They no longer want their cosmetics to have been tested on animals. And we believe very strongly that animal testing bans accelerate the development and validation of alternatives. And many of those alternatives often have uses beyond cosmetics. So in household products, in the pharmaceutical industry, and medicine, which can only be a good thing. So at the time we did the European Union ban, and in response to a lot of the countries that we're talking about a global ban with, they say, well, what's going to happen to our cosmetics industry? Well, the European Union cosmetics industry continues to be the biggest in the world by quite some considerable margin and has actually grown and prospered. Took legal advice and were told, you know what, you could actually go for a UN convention. You could actually table a resolution to the UN asking for this to be ended once and for all, on the basis of the current position being bad for animals, for industry, and for consumers. So in February, we went to the UN, a flash mob in front of the UN building in New York, to launch our campaign to globally end cosmetics animal testing. So we need one of the 193, I think it is, current sovereign member states of the United Nations to put a resolution on the table saying that we should end cosmetics testing on animals globally. And I've been working with different governments, talking to them about the likelihood of doing this. Understandably, European Union governments would like to work collectively. We have partnered with the global beauty brand The Body Shop, which has outlets in over 60 countries worldwide. Bring this campaign into the public realm and to the attention of governments in the UN around the world. It's the Forever Against Animal Testing campaign. Hashtag Forever Against Animal Testing. It should be a petition. We're looking for 8 million signatures in every single Body Shop outlet to go with information on the Forever Against Animal Testing campaign. On Tuesday in Brussels, we're organising an opportunity for all MEPs to come along and sign a large version of that petition. Have your photo taken. We've got some model press releases and some model social media announcements for people to use, which will be available on Tuesday between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the Parliament in Brussels. So that needs to happen through governmental action. Companies aren't going to do that on their own, and regulators aren't going to do that on their own. And a leading Australian scientist based at the University of Queensland, also in the light of the proposed Australia ban, started talking the other week about a global accord to end cosmetics animal testing. Please use any international contacts that you may have to move this issue forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for this informative presentation and your personal engagement. I think when we bite the teeth together and work very hard, we will reach a success very soon. It depends if we get a resolution on the level of the UN.